vivid debate, I hope, about what does the sustainable peace truly mean in the context of Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. We'll be having a lot of good guests, including our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Oana, but also her counterpart from Ukraine. He will join us from Kiev, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Andrii, SYBIHA. But first, before we start the panel, I will invite Minister ţOIU to come and address to the rest of us to see her point of view on what sustainable peace really means. Minister.
Good morning. It is an honor and a privilege for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be able to allow for the patronage of this event together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. This has been on the conversations and plans we have done with Andrii SYBIHA, and I'm so grateful that he is able to take the time and the energy to participate today via VTC in the event. He has just arrived in Kyiv, and as we all know here across the room, the entire Ukrainian team is heavily involved in the negotiations, and even more so, we are grateful for their time, their energy, and their patronage of this event. Dear Mr. Nitsu, dear Mr. Scutaru, distinguished audience, excellencies, I see in the room so many friends of Ukraine, so many supporters and strong believers in the peace process, and so many friends of Romania, actually. I'm honored to join you today and share a few thoughts on Romania's view towards ensuring a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, conducive to Ukraine's and the region's security and prosperity. Obviously, here in this spectacular room with this distinguished audience, I would like to extend my gratitude and the gratitude of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the new Strategy Center team. This is actually not the first event we do together. It's a long-standing partnership, and we're grateful for their unparalleled work in bringing us together and facilitating the exchanges of valuable ideas and solutions. Because action is needed, and that is based on dialogue such as the one we are having today. We truly value the partnership and your contribution to foreign and security policy. Therefore, the patronage of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to this conference has been a natural choice. I would also like to greet the fellow panelists that are going to join us today, which will focus on the key topics of peace. Mrs. SIRKO, Secretary General Dalmas, we have had a great conversation yesterday on how next year, where Romania is going to have the presidency of the Central European Initiative, we can focus together in this format as well to be able to support the reconstruction of Ukraine, to focus on the return of the kidnapped children, and also be able to take a wider lens and see how this moment in time, through the peace process and then going forward to the reconstruction process, is also a moment where our region altogether creates a modern space, uses this crisis to have a leap into the future in terms of infrastructure, in terms of governance, in terms of modernization, and in terms of especially the connectivity we need in the region to be more enhanced. Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember the promise of a Europe free, whole, and at peace. This is not a new promise. This is an old promise, and a promise that we need to protect every day. Peace is our main objective. Romania, Ukraine, the European Union, the United States, friends across the world, we all strive for this objective. It is intrinsic to our policy and our values, and this is shown in the leadership of the international community now, also the US approach with peace through strength, the EU's approach of robust approach for peace and support for Ukraine throughout this process, and also evident in our contribution and initiatives for regional stability and security. Especially, we have focused throughout the last half a year on the Odessa Triangle, which is the format of trilateral work between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. We're going to host in Bucharest in the first trimester of 2026 the next meeting, and we're currently working on the agenda, so we focus on things that are very practical and needed for us. We need to take an approach that is both focused on present needs and also on the long-term future. We also work together together in the mine countermeasures in the Black Sea task group with Türkiye and Bulgaria, and also a strong collaboration with Ukraine. And we need to remind us again that it's not only about the contribution and the support that we give to Ukraine, but it's also every day about the sacrifice, the work, and the results Ukraine has in keeping the region protected as much as it's possible, in keeping the Black Sea safe. For example, this is something that we're doing together, and this is something that has been proved absolutely essential, for example, in allowing for the commercial flows to take place. The most clear example has been the grains, and especially the role of the Constanța harbor, a role we want to protect and increase in the future as well. In the same time, we cannot be naive, especially here in the region, especially here in the eastern flank, and especially if you look at the history of Romania. We know very clearly that when we look at Russia, we need to look at what they're doing, not just at what they're saying. And in that sense, we do not yet see the actions that will make us trust the idea that Vladimir Putin searches or is willing to allow for peace to happen. This being said, though, what we see is that our common strategies, which is to continue the support for the resilience of Ukraine, while also increasing the pressure that we put on Russia to authentically sit at the negotiation table, is working. Case in point, in Romania, what we have done throughout the unprovoked war of aggression is we have been steady and clear in our support towards peace, and that has meant support for Ukraine. And also in the last half a year, we have been more direct, we have been more strict about how we apply pressure. Specifically, we have changed, for example, the consequences of those that want to elude sanctions. We have changed what was in the law just a simple fine, similar to, unfortunately, illegal parking, for example, to something that is more adapted to the reality of the organized networks financed from Russia that were still trying to generate illegal profits that indirectly or directly were financing the war. And now, together with the Ministry of Justice, we have proposed from the government to the parliament a stricter law that has passed with a large majority, and that also shows that beyond our political heated debate, sometimes there are some objectives where we can fully align. And now the new consequences are jail time from 1 to 5 years, and in very severe cases up to 12 years in jail. And this is especially something that is important as a deterrence, as a discouragement factor in that regard. We have also moved some of the competencies where they have more resources and more know-how to be applied in the code to be able to have the proper response to that. We have just had some meetings in the previous weeks to look at how we make sure that Constanța Harbor continues to be protected and continues to be monitored in such a way that the shadow fleet doesn't stop in the Constanța Harbor. We have good news here. It hasn't been the case that the shadow fleet used the Constanța Harbor, and we will continue to make sure that doesn't happen in the future as well. Now, if we look at Russia's intensified attacks against civilian population and infrastructure, energy infrastructure specifically, as winter is now upon us, we need to, again, be very clear that we see that their objective is not just short-term, but long-term. It's an objective to provoke the entire idea of having a safe region, the entire idea of having a European Union that is expanding. Therefore, what they're doing, what they have done in the last years and the last months to bring utter destruction to Ukraine and Ukrainians doesn't just stop at their objectives there, but it is clearly having an impact across the region. So we will continue to see Russia as what it is, an existential threat, not just to us, but to the whole Euro-Atlantic area, where it pursues also not just the direct unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine, but also hybrid campaigns, especially here on the countries that we are at the eastern flank. So even in the following week in Finland at the summit, it is very important for us to also restate the idea that we need to protect the entire eastern flank. And the Secretary General Marute has mentioned in his visit in Romania, we need to look at it also from the Black Sea to the Nordics. And also, after the visit I've had to Kyiv and chernobyl and the conversations I directly had with the community, and this is something that I think many across the room or that are watching us today have noticed either directly in the community or through the wonderful ambassadors that Ukraine has across the world and the wonderful community, or even in the online conversation space. We're looking at a community that is resilient, that is patriotic, that is very clearly have an aspiration towards peace, but the dignity and respect for their own work and their own country is to search for a dignified and sustainable peace. But it is also a competition between different futures. Russia wants one specific future, and there's a reason why the hybrid campaigns, the malign information interferences are almost always based on negative messages on what we're doing, are almost always based on negative messages about what the European Union is doing, and that is simply because it is almost impossible to base those campaigns on positive messages about the quality of life in Russia, the quality of democracy there, or what they are doing. So they're just focusing on trying to delegitimize or minimize the impact, the power, and the influence other has, simply because they cannot talk about their own models of democracy, economy, or approach around the world. And on the other side, on another potential future for the region and for Ukraine, lies the EU enlargement. And here we need to be very, very clear on the fact that we are supporters of the EU enlargement. We will continue to be supporters of that. The investments we now see from the European Union are also, again, investments not just in the region, but to the European Union's own security. We need to look at the enlargement process as a merit base and very much contingent to the continuation of reforms by the candidates. Romania strongly supports the opening of negotiations on Cluster 1 with Ukraine and Moldova, because there are simply no valid reasons to delay, and further delay is detrimental to the European Union's overall interests. Romania, with its relatively fresh but solid experience of EU accession negotiations, stands ready to share the lessons learned with our neighbors. We will do that directly in bilateral relationships. We will do that through the Central European initiatives, and we are already doing that for some years through the think tanks, civil society, and the experts network. A new strategy center has also had, and I'm sure will continue to have, a strong contribution in that space. We have launched at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also our consultative body with or civil society organization bodies, and this is also one of the topics that we are focusing on for next year. Now, my third point, which is the reconstruction and prosperity of Ukraine. We strongly believe in Ukraine's European integration, and the reconstruction process go hand in hand as complementary and reinforce one another to benefit the whole region. We need not only to build back better, but build a European Ukraine. Ukraine should not only fulfill, recover from the fallout of Russian aggression, but also strengthen the democratic reforms and liberties, confidently advance towards an open, tolerant, and inclusive society. Something that is very important for us from Romania, something that we have spoken about in Chernobyl, the Odessa Triangle, is also in the current reforms and in the future reforms to make sure that we support Ukraine on the direction of also ensuring for minority rights in the future. For us, the Romanian language is something very important and something that we're going to continue to focus on together. Now, Romania has some intrinsic assets such as proximity, capacity, and knowledge. Yes, geography matters, but that is not enough. That is why we have taken concrete actions to make sure, for example, that we increase the connectivity. We currently have a master plan for road interconnectivity with new border points that have opened, another one to open soon, including a new bridge nearing completion. A new highway connecting Bucharest with the border of Ukraine is under construction, and currently when we look at the new financing opportunities, such as the SAFE mechanism, which is the European financing mechanism for military procurement, but also dual use and connected infrastructure. This is also a moment where Romania has had the opportunity again to allow for affordable financing to finish large infrastructure projects and continue them at the pace that the Romanians expect. And the highway that connects us to Moldova, Ukraine, is essential in that direction. Transport capacity on the Danube has vastly improved, and again, part of the conversations we're having with Ukraine, but also with the rest of the countries at the Danube, is to make sure not only that we keep the Danube safe, but also that we increase its role in the future and we increase the transportation capacity. When we are talking about security guarantees, for example, and the peace process, security in the area and the Black Sea, we need to have a focus also on the Danube Delta and the Black Sea to make sure we are focused on allowing for that to continue to be safe in the future and have the proper security guarantees. The reconstruction framework has to have a regional perspective in mind, and we also need to factor in the Republic of Moldova, which is something that, again, we address constantly through the Odessa Triangle. Now, to the participation of the private sector. Here, yes, it remains critical for the outcome of the reconstruction process, but I have to use the advice that the President has often given us in many formats, and actually it has been also his campaign keyword, which is to be honest. And here, we need to be honest among ourselves that for some time, in terms of the connection between the public institutions and the private sphere in Bucharest to the topic of the Ukraine reconstruction, it hasn't always been a clear alignment in terms of what do we see as key areas in the future, or how is it that the public institutions are also a support for the private sphere to be able to contribute to the reconstruction. And when I mean contribute, and this is for the larger audience that we might have, I need to clarify that it is not just a paradigm of humanitarian aid, or it's not just a paradigm of support, it is also a paradigm of growing together our economies. Because when we look at what will be the largest construction and development project on our continent in maybe 100 years, we need to understand that that is also something that connects our economy, that connects our private companies, that creates new commercial flows, and therefore creates something that is at the core of our resilience, of Ukraine's resilience, of the region's resilience, which is creating jobs, creating good quality jobs, creating commercial flows, and creating an economy that is strong enough not just to keep us away from malign influence, but also to increase the power, the influence, and the role the region has overall. Because Europe depends now not just on what we now need to improve, which is the European Union single market, but also if you look at the share we have in the global economy, yes, as the US has so clearly pointed out, the share of the European Union in the global economy has decreased in terms of percentage. That has been the case for more mature economies. It is not just our situation. But if we want to keep the pace of growth, that means enlargement, that means increasing the market, that means the growth of the regions, of the neighboring country, and that specifically for the reconstruction of Ukraine and for Romania's role means that we need to look at the present moment, at and the urgent decisions that we need to take, but also take them in such a way that for the next decade, for example, the growth, the role, and the influence of the region is going to contribute to the overall growth, security, safety of the continent, and therefore of the citizens' decision to keep us all on that European future path. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you so much, Minister. It's a lot of work to do, as you mentioned. Before we set up the connection with Kiev to hear the speech of Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andrii, SYBIHA, I would like to invite the rest of the panelists on the stage. First, Mrs. Yulia SYRKO, First Deputy Head of Transport and Infrastructure Committee at Verkhovna Rada, Ukraine. Then Mr. Franco Dal-Amas, Secretary General, Central European Initiative, Italy. Please welcome. Ambassador Michaël, Envoy for the Eastern Partnership at the Black Sea from France. Please join me on the stage. Take a seat. Hello. Hello. And last but not least, we have two more guests, John Rendon, President and CEO of the Rendon Group, Senior Expert in Global Strategic Communication, United States, and Ambassador Tacan, ILDEM, Chairman, Center for Economic and Foreign Policy Studies, Türkiye. Welcome. Let's, as I said, till we have the connection with Kiev, to continue our debate here. And since you are the first one on my right, Ms. SYRKO, please tell us your view on what sustainable peace means for your country and for the region.
First of all, thank you very much. I'm not tired to say thank you for all our European partners as well, and not European, only European, but for Romania as well. You are one of our most reliable and most helpful neighbor. You are hosting a lot of Ukrainians. You are helping us with the logistics and many other things. So thank you very much for that. Also, thank you for George, who invited us and hosting us here. He is the biggest advocate of Ukraine, probably in Romania. So thank you for that. And coming back to our topic, let's probably start with what is going on in Ukraine, because I mean, in Romania and Europe, it looks completely different, probably with what we see on the ground. So what we see on the ground, it's actually the hot phase of war is going on. The missiles and the drones coming to the heads of the Ukrainian families and homes every day. So the energy infrastructure destroyed and is destroying by Russians every day. So we have like blackouts for 10 hours, sometimes for 16 hours per day. And they cannot win a battlefield with the army, so they are terrorizing civilians every day. So that's the strategy of Russia. And if you are looking on the numbers from Russia's side, you will see that for 4 years they spent over 1 trillion for the war. I mean, we have war for 12 years almost, but for 4 years they spent over $1 trillion. They lost over 1 million people, Russian people, and they actually occupied less than 1% of Ukrainian territory, which is basically not a territory. It's even there is no cities, so it's burned territory. So this is probably the most costly and most stupid war in the decades. So I don't know how to explain it, but they are going on with the war despite it's obviously they cannot do more than they done. So that's why they somehow, and for 2026, you will see the budget, Russian budget. You will see that they spent 40% of their budget for the war dedicated. It's half of $1 trillion. And they, at this point of time, they decreased a lot of social programs for Russians. So they cannot, because of the Brent oil prices, and because of the decreasing revenues in the budget, they are decreasing. They actually increasing war and decreasing social payments. So at some point of time, they will have social problems, because people will ask why we have to pay 40% of our budget to this stupid war, which cost us 1 million lives, $1 trillion, 1% of Ukrainian territories, burned territories. And I think this question will come in 2026 or 27. That's why Putin somehow convince our U.S. partners and present us with a basically not peace plan but capitulation plan of 28 points, which are not consisting of concession of territories, decreasing of army, Ukrainian army, no membership in NATO, and many others. So this is 28 points. They are mostly capitulating points, which are not acceptable for Ukrainians, despite we are living in the blackouts and under the missiles. So either this plan will be somehow how to say it, be renegotiated and be more suitable for all parties, or it's a dead end. Because we already had 40 rounds of negotiations with Russia, and with the same result, dead end. Because the only person who can end the war is a Putin sitting in Kremlin. There is no other players, despite you have a panel with a lot of players. And at this plan, they arrive of 28 points. It's also now basically touching also European interest, because there is 200 billion of frozen assets, which will go somewhere to the reconstruction of Ukraine, but with US funds. So also very, so to say, discussing questions. Honestly, this plan is so absurd for Ukrainians that we are not discussing it. So either negotiating groups and negotiations will go into the more rational way, or it's again a dead-end situation. Because this is not a sustainable peace, it's actually invitation to the war. This plan that presented to Ukraine and to Europe is not a plan for sustainable peace, it's a plan for the next war. So it's an invitation for the war, next war in Ukraine as well as in Europe. So why I'm talking a lot of numbers, etc., just to explain the situation, because sometimes it's not obvious in Europe how it's going on the Ukrainian battlefield and in Ukrainian war. And also you saw this national strategy, security strategy of US, where they are actually saying that their interest laying in the Pacific, in Arctic, and not in European continent. So if we want to have a sustainable peace, first of all, negotiations should be more rational and more acceptable for both parties. Then we have to be ready on a European continent to protect ourselves, not relying for many partners abroad, including US, because US, as you saw this security strategy, already not with Europe, so to say. So they see their perspectives in completely different regions. So Europe should admit it, realize it, and together with the experience of Ukraine, experienced army, 1 million army of Ukraine, build de facto a new defense security strategy on a European continent. Yes, NATO is a NATO. We can, so to say, stay with NATO, but think more and be focused that we have to protect ourselves without hoping that tomorrow US will come and will solve all of our problems in Europe, in Ukraine, and anywhere. So that's how I see the sustainable peace. Because we have experienced army, we have new technologies which you don't have on European continent, and which is very helpful. You have to understand that 70 to 80% of on the battlefield now, it's not a conventional war. It's a modern technologies which include drones, new kind of weapon, and completely different, so to say, approach to the war. So maybe it's time to start and implement it on a European continent, to have not only walls, but drone walls, but I would say it should be more drones umbrella or security umbrella on the European continent, because you never know if tomorrow Russia would start to think about invading any European countries, or it will be the capitulation plan of Ukraine will be invitation plan for European invasion. Thank you. That's all from my side. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for thank you for your view, and I would like now Ambassador Michaël to give us the view of the European side, because indeed we do have the same point of view when it comes to sustainable peace, but then again we also, as Mrs. SYRKO said, we have to take care as well of the security of the continent.
Okay, thank you very much. I thank you for your invitation first, and this panel is taking place at a very crucial time. I will speak mostly for France, and maybe I'm not interested to speak for the whole EU. And I will say some words on the present negotiation of peace in Ukraine, and then some words on the security of Europe in the medium or long term. First, a new intense diplomatic phase has started in November, and at this stage of the negotiation, there is no finalized peace plan. And this plan cannot be finalized without the Ukrainians and the Europeans at the table. Indeed, in this negotiation, everybody has a role. The United States of America has taken the role of a mediator, and we do support its effort. I will come back on that. Russia, as you said, Mrs. Deputy, is the only one that could and should end the war, but it is not willing to do so. It refuses all the proposals of ceasefires, and it is completely adamant in the negotiations. Ukraine is the only one that can discuss territories, nobody else. And the Europeans and the coalition of the willings will be the guarantors of this peace solution. So France's position and actions in this context are as follows. First, France is working for a just and sustainable peace. What does a just peace mean? This is a peace which is not a capitulation and respects international law. That is, any peace solution must preserve the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine and comply with the United Nations Charter. A sustainable peace is a peace that offers sufficient long-term security guarantees for Ukraine to deter Moscow from pursuing its wars of conquest in the Black Sea, because the words and the agreements are not enough, and this is the experience we had. And these guarantees will be supported collectively by the coalition of the willing. There will be a new meeting of the coalition tomorrow, I think. And France has played a leading role in the formation of this coalition since February 2025. To go into detail, the first security guarantee is the Ukrainian army, a strong, trained, and financed in the long run Ukrainian army. And the second component is the so-called reassurance forces. The work is already planned by the chiefs of staff. It is partly confidential. And there are important discussions underway on the contribution of the United States of America to these guarantees, and this is directly linked to the negotiations. The second point is that France supports the United States' efforts to end the war and restore a form of stability in the region. We have been doing that since the beginning of 2025. We are still in a very hectic moment. We had many meetings in Geneva. President Zelensky was 2 times in Paris in the recent days. Presidents met on Monday in London. They had yesterday evening, I think, a conversation again with Donald Trump. The point is to work on the convergence of the US proposal and the European and Ukrainian positions. And the third point is that any negotiation and parameters directly affecting the European Union, which includes the security of Romania, which includes the enlargement to Ukraine and Moldova, must also involve the Europeans. This is obvious, but this is good to remind it. So the corollary of these positions on the negotiations is that as long as the war of aggression continues, we will continue to support Ukraine's heroic resistance effort. We will continue to provide all the needed financial assistance together with our partner, and important decisions are being made today and tomorrow in the European Summit on this subject. You mentioned it. And the second point, we will continue to sanction Russia. 20th package is being prepared, as much as possible coordinated with the US sanctions. And the aim is to exert the maximum pressure on Russia to bring Russia to a genuine desire for peace. And these sanctions, as Mrs. Minister underlined, are working. A second point on the prospects for peace and the world in the medium and long term. I return to the last point, which was mentioned in the panel, to what extent are peace negotiations a form of politics of delay employed strategically by Russia? France has produced a strategy for the Black Sea, which was presented at the Black Sea Security Forum in May by Minister Haddad. And this is indeed fully our analysis. Since 2008, Russia has exploited all the efforts to restore peace and stability in the region, to consolidate territorial gains, and prepare within 6 or 5 years a new brick of international law, always more audacious, always more violent. And a bad peace in 2002 will make no exception. So this analysis drives us to consider that Russia is now a threat to Ukraine, of course, particularly even to Mykolaiv and Odessa region, and to the region, to Moldova, to the Danube Delta. And everybody noticed that President Putin was employing the term Novorossiya more and more, and this is quite worrying. Russia is also the primary threat to European security today. This is what underlined by the minister, and a capitulation by Ukraine would give Russia free rein to go further in Europe. And we are already under attack of Russia with war of information and hybrid attacks. And the last point is that this is a major threat to international security, and we are already seeing that. A flawed peace agreement which would reward the aggression will have incalculable consequences on the world, on the peace in the world, and everybody noticed that the UN Secretary General had to remind that right after the publication or the announcement of the 28 points plan. This is a worry at the UN level. Another factor, to say the least, is that there is a shift of priority of the United States, which began years ago. Washington intends to concentrate more on Asia, and is calling Europe to take greater responsibility for its own defense. This is not abnormal. Any country is scoping for its own defense. We have to do so. And this is aligned with the discourse of France on strategic autonomy, which we have been advocating for years. So in this dual context, France continues, and I'm finishing with that, to call for Europe massive investment in its defense capabilities, that is, in the European pillar of NATO. This is underway. As to France, we have doubled our budget defense, and we just reinstated national military service. And second point, we are also advocating for European preference in armed procurement, because this is needed. This is needed to provide visibility to the private investors of Europe to invest in defense and rebuild our defense industrial and technological base. And the very successful visit of President Dan to Paris, which ended yesterday, proved that this is fully possible and that we are on the right path. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would turn now to Franco Dalmas, Secretary General for Central European Initiative, to give us the point of view of what such an institution can do for sustainable peace.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank the organizer for the invitation. I am glad to contribute to this panel as a Secretary General of the Central European Initiative, the oldest and largest regional organization in Europe. A short brief about the CEI. It was established in 1989 to facilitate cooperation in Europe among countries that were once divided, based on a vision of a united Europe, expressed by Gianni De Michelis immediately after the fall of the Berlin Wall. History, as you know, has evolved in a more different scenario. In 1989, some believed that history had reached it and the democratic system had finally prevailed worldwide. However, the idea of the end of history is older. Hegel had already imagined a universal and uniform state, shaped by legal unification and symbolized by Napoleon. That was therefore not the end of the history, but the start of a new one. After the Second World War, we should remember Churchill. An iron curtain has descended across the continent. That curtain, he said, stretched from the Baltic down to the Adriatic, cutting major capitals such as Bucharest, Belgrade, Budapest, Warsaw, Prague out of Europe. This showed that history does not stop. It reappeared in new form. In the past, Einaudi and Spinelli wanted to remove national sovereignty from constitution. At that time, this was not possible, and the progress could only come through agreement between government, from the European Coal and Steel Community to the European Economic Community, then the Maastricht Treaty, and so on. Even today, however, we cannot say that Europe is a single state, nor that true Europe people exist. Let us recall an example from the United States. After the creation of the American Confederation, Thomas Paine identified a great challenge, uniting different culture, people, and languages under the one federal nation. Its spirit lives in the opening word, we the people. Today, there is a growing effort to divide the Atlantic space and fuel opposing nationalism. Could Europe be influenced by this trend? Or will deterrence, that often misunderstood, become necessary again to defend Europe and its identity against the new global power? Supporting regional cooperation and advancing the European integration of Moldova, Ukraine, and the Western Balkans is not a symbolic act. It is a key step in bringing Europe back together. This is why we speak not of enlargement, but of reunification. Minister Tajani always said this thing. This required difficult and costly decision, but it marked the real difference between autocratic regime and democracies based on the rule of law. The CI has always stood by Ukraine, supporting its fight for freedom and its European future. I personally visited Kiev on 19 November, where I met Minister SYBIHA, who expressed appreciation for the CI support to Ukraine. He highlighted several issues that require greater international attention, such as the return of 20,000 Ukrainian children held under Russian control, and the country's urgent needs, particularly regarding energy security and the safeguarding of critical infrastructure. The strong call of the fate of the Ukrainian children was taken by the CI ministerial meeting that convened 2 weeks ago in Belgrade under the Serbian presidency, and it also found an echo in the demand by the United Nations General Assembly last week. The ministerial meeting provided a basis from the continuous support to Ukraine in the framework of the CI presidency of Romania in 2026. Yesterday, during our meeting with Minister ЩОИУ, we started our joint cooperation in this regard. I would like to commend Romania for its comprehensive and multidimensional approach, focused on resilience building, including the fight against disinformation. Looking ahead, I also welcome Ukraine's intention to hold the CI presidency in 2027. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Rendon, moving on to you. Russia is doing some communication with the American part, in the same time is continue to attack Ukraine continuously. Do you think this is a sort of a deal or it's a sustainable peace?
So first off, thank you to the organizers and to the ministries for the invitation to be here. I may be the only non-government official on the podium, and I could tell you that coming from the United States, I brought 753 slides in order to demonstrate my remarks. A little bit of sarcasm, sorry. What I tell you is that Russia is unrelenting in its objective. Hybrid warfare is probably well known, but not known well, and extends across every country in Europe and probably to most countries in the world. Someone just quoted Winston Churchill, for example, but in 1947 he wrote a book, The Gathering Storm, and I'd love to tell you that peace is on the horizon, but the storm is coming. And in some places the storm has already arrived. The challenge in reconstruction, though, is a strategic one. And that strategic choice is whether or not the international community makes a decision to help Ukraine go back to where it was the day before Russia invaded, or to help it leapfrog into the future. And this is always the challenge after every conflict. I also work Kuwait, so I know about reconstruction. You have a chance to use this period for planning and preparation to build resilient societies in every country that is under threat or currently under attack. And if you do not do that, you will wake up and find out you have already lost. And it's not necessarily about combat operations anymore. Ukraine has done an extraordinary job with limited resources and the will of the people to win. But the choice now for every country is to understand that Putin will not stop until Putin is stopped. And if you get a deal, it doesn't mean the deal will hold. He will keep coming. And if you're not ready to identify information that comes into it, get your public to wake up every single day with an individual responsibility of a citizen, whether they're in Romania, Moldova, or any other country on the planet, they need to ask the question, what will I do this week to make sure that when Putin wakes up and he looks in my direction, he decides today's not a good day? And that's where information comes into play.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ambassador Tacan ILDEM, Türkiye has a different role because it's a NATO member, and also it's part of trying to get everybody to the table. What's your take on this peace plan that is now under debate?
Well, at the outset, let me express my thanks to New Strategy Center and the organizers of this meeting. Thank you for the invitation. It's a very timely discussion, so I'm happy to be part of this debate. Like my American colleague, I'm also coming from non-governmental side, although I worked for government in the past, but now I speak out my free views. I was in London a week ago at the time when we had the 28-point so-called peace plan. And of course, we had an ample opportunity to discuss it. Since we are debating whether it should be a sustainable peace or a deal, of course, we very much support the idea of a sustainable peace, because any deal guided by power politics may bring an end to the kinetic confrontation on the ground, but at the same time will create circumstances. I think
Ambassador, if I may interrupt you, yes, let's go now to Kiev because
Okay.
we have Minister of Foreign Affairs,
All right.
Andrii SYBIHA. Minister, welcome with us here. We are talking about a sustainable peace to Ukraine, considering the ongoing debate now with mostly United States, Russia, and of course Ukraine. Tell us your point of view when it comes to what are the red lines and what a sustainable peace will mean, not only for Ukraine, but also for the entire region? Minister, do you hear us? I think the connection is...
Can you hear me?
Minister, we do not hear you. Do you hear us?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. Did you hear my question? I was asking what sustainable peace means for Ukraine and also for the region from the Ukrainian point of view.
Good morning once again, Your Excellency, Madam Minister, Oana, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, friends. It is an honor to address you today. Right now, we are in a decisive and critical momentum. The peace process is advancing, and our peace efforts now have a real chance. We are grateful to our American partners for their leadership in the process. We also thank European partners for being with us. Coordination and unity are critically important. We are in the process, that's important. The 20-point document is a starting platform for peace efforts. Ukraine has doable proposals on how to proceed and to achieve fair, lasting peace. In the nearest future, we should expect new dynamics in the peace process, including in the leaders' level. Full diplomatic mobilization is needed. Now we all understand that a ceasefire is fundamental, and we are also ready for a partial ceasefire. We need it as a confidence-building measure. Our people must see that we deliver tangible results. But we do not see any sign of willingness for peace from Moscow. Instead, it increases terror against civilians and attacks on the battlefield or infrastructure. It tries to frighten the world, to make the world accept its crimes. The level of challenges we face today can be compared with 2022, the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Peace through strength remains the only right strategy. Today, we must abandon wishful thinking. Every time the world chose to appease an aggressor, it only paved the way for bigger aggression. Pressure must be increased, sanctions must be increased, and well synchronized. Strengthening Ukraine is essential. Dear friends, I will be straightforward. I am sure that there will be no real security in our region without restoring Ukraine's sovereignty, including Ukrainian Crimea. Russia fully destroyed Black Sea security architecture, broke supply chains and sea trade. It also militarized the occupied Ukrainian peninsula and turned it into the base of aggression. With international reactions to Russia occupying Crimea in 2014 and Abkhazia on Transnistria in the early 90s have led us to Russia's full-scale war. Only our common strength will prevent a new Russian war in the future. What started in Crimea must end in Crimea. This is not a political declaration. It is the only viable concept of security for our region. It is the only vision that keeps international law alive. And this is what must be remembered. Any appeasement of Russia only made Russia more aggressive. This circle needs to be broken. Dear Oana, I thank you for our excellent cooperation and for all the support Romania provided. We are now finalizing our agreement on strategic partnership, because this is what our relations have become. Since your visit to Kyiv and our meeting with Michaël in Chernivtsi in early August, we have achieved real results, including a direct train from Bucharest to Kyiv via Moldova and the development of cross-border infrastructure. I believe this is another solidarity lane and part of our path to the EU and NATO. When it comes to the EU, it is important that Ukraine and Moldova go the way together till we both become members. Our Odessa Triangle has also delivered results in international organizations. Our 3 countries were elected to the UNESCO Executive Council, and we prevented Russia from entering it. The Danube has always been a symbol of a Ukrainian-Romanian good neighborhood. Since the beginning of the Russian invasion, it has also become a symbol of our strategic partnership. We must work together to develop the economic and logistical potential of the Danube and take care of its ecology. Today's conference, under the patronage of both our ministries, is another example. The timing could hardly be more strategic. Just yesterday, we held another round of talks with our American partners, focusing specifically on the economic dimension. We are talking long-term projects, how to bring prosperity to my country and to our region. Everybody understands today, security is the cornerstone for everything. There is no economy and development without security. We share this vision with Europe. The bad news is that Russia's hybrid war against Europe has become far less hybrid and far more war. When a Russian drone flies dozens of kilometers into Romania and spends almost an hour in Romanian or Moldovan airspace, it is not a mistake. It is a deliberate attack. It is an escalation, a provocation, and a test. Ukraine has unique experience of countering massive drone attacks. We have already become contributors to European security, and we have practically proven our effectiveness by contributing to Black Sea security. It is essential that we build our common security architecture together, both in the Black Sea region and in the rest of Europe. It is right that security stands as the key dimension of this conference on rebuilding, because rebuilding Ukraine cannot be separated from rebuilding Europe's security architecture. Today, I have 3 points to make. First, aggressors cannot be rewarded. History teaches us that every time aggression is tolerated, a bigger war comes. Russia's war against Ukraine is a test of whether the free world has learned this lesson. Therefore, we must be absolutely clear. We should prevent Munich II or a new Yalta. This is not simply a slogan. It is a moral compass for our collective security. Appeasement is always a delayed catastrophe. Second, the Black Sea cannot be a gray zone of Russia's influence. The Black Sea is a strategic artery for global trade, energy security, and food supply, not a Russian playground. Russia creates threats for every coastal state. It destroys the whole Black Sea security, blocked freedom of navigation, and cut supply chains. Each Russian mine in the Black Sea is a message that no ship, no coast, and no neighbor is safe. The EU's new strategy for the Black Sea comes timely. Europe now recognizes that maritime security here is part of whole European security, and Crimea is central to that vision. As long as Russia occupies Crimea, the Black Sea cannot be stable. The Black Sea proves that Russia can be stopped. Despite all attempts by the aggressor to block free navigation in the Black Sea, we were able to ensure a transport corridor. And here I would like to mention our partners, especially Türkiye, and take this opportunity to also thank Romania for its cooperation. With virtually no fleet of its own, Ukraine neutralized the Russian Black Sea fleet. We destroyed more than 20 Russian ships, including the cruisers Moskva and Admiral Makarov. We destroyed a third of the Russian fleet's military potential in the Black Sea and pushed it back to Novorossiysk. We are now actively countering the shadow fleet in the Black Sea through various types of sanctions, including very effective Ukrainian ones. We must also target Russia's economic warfare. This includes tough sanctions on stolen Ukrainian grain, which Russia tries to sell after from occupied territories. Ukraine is a key global food supplier, and we are ready to play this role, protecting our export routes is a humanitarian duty and a strategic necessity. Expanded presence of our allies in the Black Sea is an essential element of the future security infrastructure and future security guarantees. We need to have clarity on security guarantees before any doable peace agreement. This is really very important. And finally, the world must remember that Ukraine's grain and food shipments are lifelines for millions around the world. Securing the Black Sea means securing global food security. Third, we need a post-war strategy. Today's conference has an opportunity to shape it. There was a Marshall Plan in the past to rebuild Europe. Now we need to have a similar clear plan of post-war recovery. Russia has caused enormous damage to Ukraine. According to the World Bank, around $600 billion. We will need Romania and other partners companies to take part in the future recovery. Our task is to ensure that tomorrow Russia will not start a new war. This requires new security, strong security guarantees, and one of the most fundamental is our strong army and deterrence package. And I am certain that Black Sea region has potential to be a strong pillar of this new architecture. The region has immense energy potential, and it is on us to use it rightly. Ukraine has the capacity to become a major producer of green energy. Romania is becoming a major producer of offshore gas. Together, our region can become a cornerstone of European energy security. We closely follow the Neptune Deep project, Romania's flagship offshore gas initiative, and it will open new opportunities for the region. Ukraine has gained unique experience in coastal defense. Black Sea's potential needs our synergy of the energy production and security means. We must restore the security of the Black Sea as an integral part of European security architecture. Thank you for your attention.
And now let's go back to Ambassador ILDEM to continue your thoughts.
Well, it's good to speak after the Minister of Ukraine, and I very much subscribe to what he had said. When we talk about peace, it should be a sustainable one, not to legitimize all the gains that an aggressor had already attained. And we have to remember not only the full-scale invasion that Russia started in 2022, but also the illegitimate annexation of Crimea in 2014. Now, we have to recognize the heroism, the bravery of the Ukrainian people, defending its sovereignty and territory. We at the same time appreciate the US administration's sensitivity to bring an end to the ongoing war, which causes lots of suffering. But to bring an end should not be only a ceasefire, to bring an end to kinetic confrontation at the theater, but rather to bring an environment that would not lead to yet another aggression in the future. But if we recognize and legitimize the occupation of Russia of the Ukrainian territories, then it will create a very dangerous precedent for the future. Not only for European security in the future, but also the global order. If our American friends are so concerned about, let us say, what's happening in Asia Pacific, in the systemic competition that governs the international relations nowadays, it can also create a precedent for China to follow suit when it comes to ambitions regarding Taiwan. So we all should be extremely careful in creating a new vision for the future. Now, few words on the European vision, which has been missing, and that's why perhaps initially Europe was not at the table. First and foremost, Ukraine should be at the table because it is Ukraine being discussed. So it is inconceivable of any negotiating format excluding Ukraine in that sense. But Europe should be there because whatever will happen in Ukraine will have a direct bearing on the future of European security architecture. That's why, let us recall, in December 2021, Russia tabled 2 draft treaties, one to NATO, the other one to the United States. So European security architecture is inextricably linked to the security and future of Ukraine. And therefore, European vision should be crafted in such a way to have a say in how to bring an end to the war in Ukraine, but also how Europe will assume more responsibilities in creating capabilities to defend its continent. And the third pillar would be, what would be the future of European security architecture? We all know that all the legally and politically binding instruments have shattered. They are dysfunctional, from CFE, Open Skies Treaty, or Vienna document. Therefore, a reflection process should be started immediately. I know that arms control, confidence and security building measures are treated as a secondary issue, but it is important. Now, coming back to European vision, sometimes people immediately remember the European Union when we talk about Europe. But Europe is larger than the European Union, and I'm glad to hear my French colleague talking about strengthening the European identity within NATO, and it is true. Of course, the European Union has a particular role to play, and we see new initiatives like SAFE mechanism to create capabilities. And in that, I think European Union should go beyond its institutional boundaries, also corresponding to its commitments for NATO-EU cooperation in fully involving non-EU European allies like Türkiye. And I have to say that the E3 format, United Kingdom, France, and Germany, taking the lead is important, and we appreciate that. But again, E3 cannot be enough. We have seen during the Minsk format negotiations, it was a narrow, restricted format. But since you put the question how Türkiye can help, well, Türkiye has already shown its ability to make a good contribution in the diplomatic front, be it on grain deal, exchange of prisoners. The first 2 rounds of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine immediately after the start of the war, first in Antalya, then in Istanbul. And this year, 3 rounds of negotiations held in Turkey. Therefore, when we talk about Europe, European vision and collective identity and what we could do, it should also embrace countries like Türkiye in the equation, which can make a very solid contribution in facilitating role, mediating role. And since Black Sea was referred time and again during the interventions, and since Türkiye was mentioned as an important player in Black Sea, it is to me rather awkward for the European Union, while developing and announcing its Black Sea strategy, not to have consulted Türkiye, a very fundamental and important player in the region. Whatever strategy any institution can draft may not be applicable if you don't consult with the direct parties properly. And one last thing is that in the when we look at the United States' new security strategy, one thing is very clear. It reaffirms US's pivoting to Asia-Pacific region. It talks about Europe to assume its responsibilities. And third, it requires also some ideas for the future of European security. And for all of that, it is not anymore a sort of a wake-up call, because we have had it for long enough. It is a moment of truth that Europeans should have to face and come up with solid ideas and put their name in the equation. Otherwise, Europeans will continue to be treated as a marginalized power, which will be very detrimental for now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Ambassador. We have a little bit over 10 minutes. Unfortunately, Secretary General Dalmas have to leave us. Thank you so much for being with us. But now let's open the floor for the questions. If anyone in the room wants to address a question to any one of the panelists, please raise your hands and we will hand you a microphone. If not, I will continue myself with the questions. And I would like to ask you, Ms. SYRKO, the what-if questions. We see that the United States is insisting with the modified plan. It's a bit different, but not that different. Still talks about the territorial parts of Ukraine being offered to Russia. What if nobody will renounce at this point of view? What will Ukraine do?
Actually, I don't see any ways how legally or illegally could be concessions of territory without Ukrainian signing the agreement and Ukrainian parliament ratifying this agreement, because the borders are in our constitution, and this is what actually concession of territories. It's a rewriting of borders, which is the precedent from the World War II. There is not a single country, particularly in Europe, which legally rewrited its borders after World War II. So this will be a precedent. And then after Ukraine, we will have questions from Moldova. Not questions from Moldova, but questions for Moldova, because Transnistria is on table for Russia. Georgia and many other countries. With the frozen conflicts in Europe. So this is Pandora box. It's not only about Ukraine. It's just the first step. If the concessions will be done by somebody, I cannot imagine how you can do it legally, but this is a Pandora box for everybody, including in the Pacific. Because if the US strategy focused on Indo-Pacific, then we have a Taiwan and question from China, which will take the Ukrainian precedent as excuse to either annex or encircle or do something with the Taiwan. So it's just first step to the world, I would say not world order, but world disorder. So this is very dangerous, not only for Ukraine. We're now not talking not only about Ukraine. We are talking about Europe. I fully agree with my colleagues that Russia will not stop on Ukraine. They can invade Europe without Ukraine, entering Ukraine. So Europe has borders with Belarus, which is a part of Russia, basically, and they can invade through these borders. So, I mean, this is a very dangerous precedent, which will not lead to the peace. It will prolong war and will start another bigger war, because the Russian intentions and Russia's big brother, China, is not about Ukraine. It's about Europe. It's about new political order. And basically, weak Russia and Russia in war is very beneficial for China. So they can use Russia as they want. And this is a big danger for Russia as well. I think what Trump is trying to do in his strategy, he's trying to split somehow, to separate Russia from China. But honestly, it's too late. So they are very financially deep ties with China. They have a lot of joint production, a lot of financial resources going back and forth, as well as many other things. So I think this strategy is not feasible and implementable. So I mean, these concessions, maybe it's for you it looks like a small concession of Donbass. But it will have a completely different impact on European and the world order. As well as we heard this story about let's do concession with Crimea. Crimea just don't fight. He will not go beyond Crimea. I remember these speeches in 2014. All international partners, including European partners, told us, don't fight. Just leave Crimea. He will not go. He will annex Crimea and not go inside the continent. And what happened? In a few years, he just accumulated enough forces to invade, to do full-scale invasion. The same situation will be after any kind of concessions. So he was just accumulate. He feels blood. He feels blood, he will accumulate more forces and just will start doing the same with Europe. Not with Ukraine, because probably we are too big for him to swallow with 1 million army, but with European countries, particularly Baltic countries, Poland, I mean, I think it's not problem for Russia. They are strong enough to start a hybrid war, and not only hybrid war with European countries.
Thank you for your answer. Ambassador Roux, I would like to take the idea of Ambassador ILDEM and ask you if European Union, considering this entire situation, should actually change its view and working better with the rest of the countries of Europe, Ukraine, Türkiye, but also other non-members of EU, simply because the situation imposes, and we saw the shift of the United States is starting to do.
Yes, of course, and this is being done. I mean, the situation we have since November is just the fourth time we have this since the beginning of the year, with proposals which are not acceptable for Ukraine and Europeans, and discussions, and then Russia refuses, and then it starts again within some time. But at any time, we have been working together to put together all the forces to deter Russia. And in the coalition of the willing, it was initiated by Starmer and Macron in February, Starmer, and the UK, which is not within the EU. And Turkey was invited to one of the first meetings. Minister Fidan did attend one of the meetings in February. And Turkey has a full role within the plans of the coalition of the willings as far as sea is concerned in the Black Sea. So we are already working together, and I take the point that when you make a stance, public positions, it's better to be all together and to have Turkey with us, of course. This is more deterring to Russia, I take fully this point. And I was present, personally, I was in Ankara just last month to have consultations on the implementation of our Black Sea strategy. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the room? Apparently not. Let's continue. Mr. Rendon, I would like to ask you, is United States really pivoting towards Asia, or it's pivoting rather towards itself?
Well, first off, just a reminder, I don't speak for the United States government.
You don't speak for the government. We got that.
I may know it, though. So if we put up a world map, and this goes back now 3 administrations, put up a world map and imagine everything to be flat, and then draw an ellipse that takes Indonesia, Philippines, Japan, Korea, China, India, and swings back around through Bangladesh. More people live inside that ellipse than live outside that ellipse. And quite candidly, probably the European Atlantic century was the last century. That doesn't mean that Europe's not important, and it doesn't mean that the Atlantic Alliance is not important. But Asia Pacific is real. And there are a lot of opportunities there. There are also a lot of threats. I agree with the minister. I mean, this is not just, Russia's not just about Europe. It's about everywhere, and they're pressing forward on multiple fronts. So America First, which is what President Trump campaigned on, is a unifying message for his political base. But they've got fractures in the U.S. now, as there are fractures in other places. And as I said earlier, Russia's strategy is to divide countries internally and then divide them from each other. And he's done a very successful job of that in many countries, including my own. So I think Asia is important, should be seen, this whole conversation shouldn't be Asia versus Europe. It should actually be the world versus Russia.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I want to add to this, to this focus, so to say, because actually when Trump started to campaign, he openly said that he will focus on Indo-Pacific. So it was 3 years ago. I mean, I remember that his policies and the policies of, new policies of Republicans was focused on Indo-Pacific and northern route, Arctic. So because why? Because US is about money. Money and resources. Money and resources located in Indo-Pacific and on Northern Route. Northern Route, because of the climate change, is more comfortable and suitable now. It's shorter, it's cheaper logistics, and it's opening a lot of opportunities. Not going through all our seas, borders, countries, NATO, European, you have thousands of regulations. You have one road, and it's very suitable, more period of navigation, and all fight is about the northern route, Arctic resources, and Asia with a lot of people living there. So basically, it's a new, so to say, economic strategy it's not only about security, it's also economic strategy of US. US based on economy, honestly. And the security and values, etc., going with money. So that's why we have to admit it and live with it, because this is their choice. They already choose it as the politicians and the nations, etc. They elected Republicans and Trump, and they focused on these regions. So what we have to do, we have to focus ourselves and give a clear answer how we will survive without US, who will be focused on a completely different sphere and regions. So that's our task. And we have to find the answer and start doing something. Not only talking, but start implementing it, doing. Europe has a tremendous industrial base after World War II, tremendous. We have new technologies. Europe has industrial base. We have a lack of cheap money to produce new technologies, drones, and many other things for the modern war. Europe has cheap money, industrial base, etc., etc. We can protect ourselves. We can. I mean, it's a matter of political will and start implementing this political will. That's it. It's not about that Europe is much bigger and richer than Russia, much more established than China, and not vulnerable as China, etc., etc. So Europe and Ukraine has enough advantages to build a new, so to say, defense, defense, not strategy, but defense idea, concept, and start doing something, not only talking, because talking, unfortunately, is not a way of protecting. The world is now about doing, not talking.
So I should probably point out that 1,000 years ago when I was young, I served as executive director and political director of the Democratic Party of the United States, and the youngest one in the history of the country. So I understand your comments.
We will end with this conclusion. Thank you so much.
Excuse me.
Yes, Ambassador, please.
My speaking point are still here.
But please be short. Okay.
Yeah, but my time has been taken. Sorry for that. Well, just a correction. It is not only Trump. It was Obama who started with his vision of pivoting to Asia Pacific. So it is a US strategy as such. But just a few points to highlight. First thing is, for a durable peace, sustainable peace, we should stick to certain principles. Okay, European security architecture may have collapsed, but those fundamental principles like respect to territorial integrity, sovereignty, independence should be sacred to maintain. Second, security guarantees would be essential. And security guarantees, until such time that Ukraine, with its sovereign decision, makes its preference whether to join any alliance or not, should be protecting whatever deal would be made. And this security guarantee would be very much related to the reassurance or deterrent force that would be deployed on the contact line, because this will be a temporary arrangement, not recognizing the occupied territories awarded to Russia, but a negotiating process should be started with benchmarks in order not to convert this into a protracted conflict. And very important component, and I have to repeat it, is the future of European security architecture, complementing all these arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists for being with us. We will have now a 10 minutes break, and let me remind you that after the break, the parallel panel will start. One will be here, moderated by George Scutaro, and the other one, level 3 of the building in Alba Yulia room. Thank you so much.